Oh, that was working. It was pretty good.
Well, actually, Josh didn't do this. I had another one in here.
All right, you are live, folks. And string X or name button. Thanks. Have a good day.
You too.
She said we're live,
Yes, sir.
ready to go.
Yes, sir.
Call the meeting to order. Any comments out there before we get in the agenda? Go ahead.
Craig Burns. I have been tracking a lot of this data from this big change from us manning the dump sites for the last 2 years. And from what I can gather from everything that I've been given and all the resources that have been given to me, that should be reversed, that there should not be somebody babysitting the dumps. There is no precedent for it in the state. The numbers now look like that is sending us spiraling toward the negative. And the numbers that were presented to the commission have not been upheld. They're far greater than that they were originally sold to the board as. And the hours as they are right now are so limiting that it's caused a lot of stress on a lot of people's lives around the county, not having proper access to the dump at hours that are reasonable for throwing garbage away. Instead, the dump is now open, which is equivalent to someone during the business day. And that's fine, but what that ends up doing is making citizens have to take a day off of work to go to the dump rather than do it at a convenient time. And that really is at this point become completely unacceptable and something that needs to be addressed right now. I've talked to Josh over great lengths, and he's working with all the numbers of how that is of how that's balancing in, but he has yet to show as well that is a positive improvement for the county. So unless the board or anybody has available information of the progression of that decision, I literally move for that decision to be reversed and us to start going back to an unmanned dump site and figure out what that's going to detail. Thank you.
Okay. I know we've talked about it in the past, what to do, and I've suggested maybe going back to the way we were before, but I think the commissioners feel that we can't go back to that. I don't know, Josh, are you have any ideas on what you were thinking?
Right now, like I said, I've started doing the 6-month full budget review. We're at where we're at, and I do believe that it's my personal and my professional belief that the out-of-county dumping may not have been quite as big of a problem as what was initially anticipated. What I think it was is there wasn't factored in on how much the county's growing. I think that's where the additional tonnage over the years were. 2020 we had 250% growth rate over 2019, and we have quite a few more subdivisions ready for approval. And I think when we saw the additional tonnage hitting on our tipping fees throughout the time, I think that's more where the issue lied. Instead of, there are out of county and out of district people. We have game cams up. On occasion we do see plates coming in, but I don't think it's quite as rampant of a problem as what was initially anticipated. I spoke with Commissioner Belger again today, trying to come up with a plan forward that basically a happy middle ground or a workable solution that would give better access to the public and also keep our tonnage down on our tipping fees, or for our tipping fees. And part of that, the packet that I handed out today was from fiscal year 18-19 to current for tonnage and tipping fees. And so it shows that we have trended down slightly, but what needs to be factored in, like Mr. Burns said, is the cost of doing business now. And that's what I've been working with the commission on.
Okay. Yeah, looking at the tonnage, it does seem like we've gone down.
It's cyclic through the years. Obviously, in the wintertime, we're moving less tonnage. People aren't doing near as many we don't have the building projects. We don't have near as much ag waste in the wintertime. So every fall and winter, you see a lowering of tonnage. But it has lowered, but it hasn't significantly lowered. But I think part of that is, on the tonnage side, is Broadwater County is growing, and it's growing quickly.
Yeah.
It appears to me that the savings in tipping fees nowhere near covers the increased cost of manpower to man the sites.
That is, when I look at it, that's my opinion as well. And we sit roughly about $160,000 to $170,000, about $167,000 for part-time workers to man the canister sites, and we're not seeing a direct reflection of that on a yearly basis.
One of the reasons we went with the manned sites is we felt at some point MACO was going to mandate that the sites were attended just because of liability issues. And so we thought maybe we'd get ahead of the game at that time. And the original figures that were given, they were not as high as what they are now, right, for sure. And so we felt like we'd give it a try. So, and we have made attempts to make it work. But I know previously we figured one attendee at each site, and then one of the attendees would also cycle back and forth between the transfer site. I think we've added another couple people on since then, and another full-time person, I believe, wasn't it?
The full-time person, I believe, was there to start with. They covered the Monday through, Tuesday through Friday at Cedar Street, and then on Monday, he's the one that cycles up to the transfer station.
Tanya, is she a full-time?
Tanya is, but she's administrative assistant, and I've just been lucky enough that she knows how to run excavator and loader, so she's been administrator slash or assistant. Administrative assistant slash equipment operator up there. That's a role that I'm very lucky that she is capable to fill, and it's a pretty unique skill set for an admin.
Yeah, but anyway, she still was an additional person, and so we hadn't counted on that in the beginning either. When Mrs. Hendrickson was on before, she felt that we would be out of the red in 2.5 years, and when Josh got on here, then he felt it was probably going to be at least 10 years before we got back in the black. So we do need to make some adjustments, that's for sure. Go ahead.
I feel like Mary might have falsely sold the extent that this needed to be needed. But from the numbers that I've gotten back from what her and what Ms. Obert had presented, they're not the same per commissioner that they were handed to. So there's actually working copies of that budget that was presented. There's not just one. So while one commissioner was given a number of such as 150,000, another commissioner was then given the same piece of paper with this similar data saying $110,000. And so there wasn't consistency in her presentation, as well as it was hastily put together. There was no backing in the prices that she put in there, no exact prices. Everything was an estimate. Absolutely all the paperwork that was presented was an estimate with no real legwork put into it. And so there was a lot of us that dug our heels in and said, hey, we don't want this. But we were willing, because of the nature of this, how this works, to wait the period of time to see what would happen. And I feel that we've gone past that time. We've able to monitor, we've seen this. We haven't raised a ruckus, but now is the time to, readdress what the path that Mary had put us down. Because we're not mirroring other counties and their growth as well. Having a full-time employee at a Broadwater dump midwinter in a booth with a heater is, it's a job, but that's really struggling to create a job right there. I can think of doing that in a hayfield too, to babysit cows. Maybe have one of the ranch hands just hang out there, because every now and then cows go down, and that could save thousands of dollars if you had somebody watching the cows. It just doesn't work like that in the reality of it. And so, people from the Winston area, as well as for their access, because they don't have that person coming in, that dump is closed so often that they've changed their habits to go into Helena. And so members of Broadwater that are over toward Helena, that have had their rights of dumping taken away, have now gone to private dumping. And so a lot of the county, it should be something that can be figured now, is that a lot of the county has now gone to private dumping out of Helena. So while a taxpayer is still paying for dumping fees and everything normal, they're having a dump truck, or having a garbage truck come from Helena, from Lewis and Clark, pick up their garbage and take it back to Lewis and Clark. And not receiving county services that entire time.
Yeah.
And that really is unacceptable for that region. And so that's a big reason for opening up those satellites and giving people the proper access to the tax money that they're spending, and for those dump sites.
And there were people that, like in Lazy HM, that were utilizing the other Tri-County to pick up their garbage. And that was being done before we even implemented this also. Just more convenience for them. And maybe more people went to it, I don't know, but we did address some of those issues. And I think the board tried to do the best options as we could with what information we were given.
Absolutely.
So, and we did feel that we needed to reevaluate after at least 6 months or a year. And so, if we could maybe move into this and maybe discuss it a little bit further into our agenda.
Great. Thank you.
And then if you have some more questions, we can further discuss it. So,
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. First on our business, did we have any minutes? Were they in here?
They're in there.
Last meeting. I didn't get a chance to go through them. Did anybody?
I just read through them at the start of the meeting here.
Okay. Did you have a chance, Chris?
Yeah, I looked at them.
Okay.
I guess first question, do we have quorum? Does 50% constitute quorum? Or does it take 2/3?
We have 3 members here, so we should have a quorum.
Okay.
Okay, so, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Approve the
Aye.
minutes?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Okay. Next on going business, I see we have Corey with us, and we're talking about an MOU update with Lewis and Clark County.
Evening, I'm Corey Swanson, County Attorney. So I have this draft MOU with Lewis and Clark County, and I'll tell you, I had concerns about it. And the reason I had concerns initially is because through the last several years and all of our dealings with Tri-County, I've dealt with them not a lot, but enough to know that there was a history in Helena and Lewis and Clark County that I didn't really know about with the company. And having talked to, when we did the current MOU that we're in with Lewis and Clark County for the landfill, I had talked with their attorney quite a bit, and he told me there was some kind of an old settlement that affected City of Helena's operations outside of city limits, and it basically saying we're very protective of that, and if you guys run afoul of that, we're probably going to have to do something about it. So what I've been doing on all these issues is I've been talking to the Deputy County Attorney Charlie Lane in Lewis and Clark County, who's very well up on these things. So I got this document. I got a hold of Charlie and I said, hey, who drafted this? I assume it came from you. Let's talk about it. And he got back to me. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. And so then I sent him the document and he said, I've never seen this before. And so I think I asked Josh, and then somehow I got word back that the city attorney had done it. So I sent it to the city attorney's office. They had never seen it. And so I started going, well, what's up with this? So then I understand that somebody not in either of those attorney's offices drafted it. And so that's big red flag for me. First thing I said was, hold on, I'm not going to, let's find out what exactly is this old settlement between Helena and Tri-County, and is this agreement going to run afoul of it? That's what I wanted to find out before we did anything. And then their two attorneys' offices said, we didn't draft this thing, so, what do you guys want to accomplish? I'm like, I thought you guys approached us on this. So anyway, in the midst of all that, then I understand that I'm not sure I guess I'm not sure where we are on if we're actually going forward with this MOU. And Josh had some concerns that he expressed to me, so I want to basically be available to feel out where you want to go with this thing, and I have some concerns about it, but I want to kind of hear from the board. But I will tell you, once both those attorneys' offices told me they didn't have anything to do with it, then I told them, well, I'm not going to do anything on it until we can meet and understand your intentions. And that's when they told us, well, we don't have intentions on this. We thought you guys were, well, number one, they didn't know anything about it. Once they dug into it, they said, well, we thought Townsend was the one, Broadwater, that was pushing for this thing. So that's what made me kind of put the pause button on. So that's about all I can tell you at the moment, but I mean, I'm available for the discussion. So I don't know if Mike wants to talk, or Josh, or you guys, or what.
There needs to be some clarification here, because we have an interlocal agreement with Lewis and Clark
I
County on
misspoke.
the
I said
waste.
MOU, but I meant interlocal. Correct.
And then the MOU is with the city of Helena, so it needed to have some proper verbiage there.
Yeah, that's correct. So the interlocal that we have with Lewis and Clark County is where we've been in a year and a half of it, right? And it's gonna be up, I think, expiring sometime this year. You're talking about a different matter basically dealing with equipment. The MOU is the equipment specifically for
With the city of Helena.
the city of Helena.
You got misinformed and you went to Lewis and Clark County right away, where they had nothing to do with it. You should have went to the city of Helena and talked with Pete Anderson instead of going to Lewis and Clark County, because the equipment stuff had nothing to do with the county. And so you shouldn't have went to the county, because they had nothing to do with it. This MOU is with the city of Helena.
Okay, so but the concern that I have, going back to the history, I'm told that there is some kind of an agreement or a settlement between the city of Helena and Tri-County that their equipment cannot provide service, solid waste service, outside the city limits of Helena. So that's what I was trying to find out, because it doesn't make sense for us to enter into an agreement that may violate that, and we're not even getting a chance to put it in motion. We're going to get sued on it. So I want to know what are the limits of that agreement. So, and I don't know that I have a full answer on that, because like I said, their city attorney was like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Because I know that Pete Anderson worked on this, and if it was illegal, he would have never, presented anything that he could do something. And just what I've been told, it's like there hasn't been any communication at all, so they don't even know what's going on, because they communicated and they've sent emails and phone calls, and nobody from Broadwater County has returned the calls saying yay or nay on anything. And it's Broadwater was going to them, they weren't coming to us, so they've been waiting to see what's going on, and so far there hasn't been any communication.
So who's Pete Anderson?
He's the manager of the landfill,
So-
but he's also the city manager. There's an interlocal agreement between the city of Helena and Lewis and Clark County for management.
Right, which is Which is what I understood, which is why I went to both Lewis and Clark and the city to find out what was going on with this agreement. So does Pete work for the county or the city or both?
He works for both.
Okay. Yeah.
But still, Lewis and Clark County has nothing to do with the MOU because they don't have the trucks to provide for the MOU. It's the city of Helena.
Okay. Well, either way, I'm not going to enter into something that's going to get us sued if we don't need to. Sometimes you have to risk lawsuits, but I'm trying to understand what is the limits of that.
Would it be Broadwater County get sued, or would it be City of Helena?
It'd be both, yeah. It'd be both.
I might be remembering wrong, but I think that agreement is something that the PSC determined.
Yeah, well, that's possible. There may have been a PSC settlement that was part of it. I think you may be right.
Yeah.
That we're talking like, I mean, I understand it's a while ago, like maybe
Yes.
late 90s?
I just always thought the Public Service Commission determined who could go where and.
Right.
And now, like the city of Helena, being able to give their equipment out to use, they're not supplying a driver, they're not picking up our trash, they're lending us a vehicle until ours gets fixed, or if some other things happen. So that way that was legal because they're not coming down and picking up our trash, they're lending a piece of equipment, and our driver is hauling to the landfill, so there wouldn't be anything wrong with doing that because we're not asking them to supply a driver and to haul our waste for us.
Well, I mean, that may or may not be the case. I mean, they view it the other way. Sorry, you're Chris, correct?
Yeah,
So who do you work for?
Lewis and Clark County.
For their solid waste program?
Yep, I'm a heavy
Okay.
equipment operator.
Okay. Well, I mean, that creates a little bit of a question, right? If you're working for them and you're on our board and.
But I don't benefit.
What's
I
that?
mean, I don't benefit from anything. I don't get paid a commission to have Broadwater County's waste go to the landfill.
Right.
I'm just a resident of Broadwater County, and I work at Lewis and Clark County. So, and their county attorney came down here during the situation that was
I was here for that.
abroad and said, I don't get anything. I'm just an equipment operator. I don't have no authority. I'm not a manager. I'm not a foreman. I'm just an equipment operator, so I don't benefit. So I don't see where I'm a conflict of interest because I don't benefit.
Right. I just think you always want to ask yourself if you have a conflict. I'm not saying you do. I think it's always a question to ask that. So what is it that you guys want to do? I mean, Josh, do you want to add anything here? I mean, I can talk more, but most of what I can tell you is I put the brakes on once both attorneys were saying, we don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, this doesn't make sense until we know. I want to know where the contours are of any agreements with that bind Helena. That's what I want to know.
I was the one that pushed for this because I know our equipment is old, and in the past when we were with Tri-County, they were able to lend us equipment and stuff. And so I felt that if we had an interlocal agreement with Lewis and Clark, which is serviced by Helena Transfer Station, that it would be possible that they could lend us equipment. And they were happy to do it, and it seemed like a very cut and dried operation. Originally I thought maybe we'd have to do an interlocal or amend the interlocal agreement that we had, but they said no, the MOU was an easy way to go, and it sounded like it should have been fairly cut and dried. So we even had a meeting with them. You weren't there, but Mike and Daryl were there. And everything got worked out, and it, like I say, seemed like it was fairly cut and dried. And I think they originally sent it to Josh, and then Josh was supposed to look at his verbiage, and then we sent it back, and then it would go through their lawyer too. So
So the board made a motion to move forward with the MOU and to work with Pete Anderson. I worked with Pete Anderson. The verbiage he sent me the verbiage. I looked at it. I forwarded it to the commission had some concerns and questions, and they forwarded on to Corey. But one of the initial questions I had is the MOU, as it reads, is really only beneficial for Broadwater County.
Right.
And I came from the public sector or the private sector, and anytime an agreement seems only beneficial to one side, that's pause for or time for question. And that's I'd asked in a meeting, I believe it was July's meeting or August's meeting, that what Lewis and Clark County stood to, or the city of Helena stood to get out of this deal if our equipment breaks and they're going to lend us equipment without a rental cost or anything, what they stood to gain from it. And from there, the answer I got is that when it came, if they lend to us, and they're in the spirit of being good neighbors and counties working with counties, but then when it came time for contract and renegotiation, that we were to keep in mind that they lend us equipment. And that part there, that is of concern to me, that's kind of an understated, or to me, if a benefit, if it's legitimate and on the up and up, it should be stated in the document. So, but as at the board's recommendation, I proceeded with Pete, sent it off to the commission, and the commission had questions and concerns. That's why they sent it to court, and that's
Okay.
where it's been.
Mike, do you know what were the other questions that the commission had? I know it's been a while since we
Well,
talked about
one
it.
thing is the benefit that we're supposed to get from Lewis and Clark County doesn't exist because they don't have a hook truck that we can use. We had our hook truck break down, we had to go to Tri-County Disposal and rent a hook truck. That's really the only piece of equipment. We have a tractor and another tractor trailer that can pull the dump trailer. They don't have a hook truck that we can use, and we had to go to Tri-County and borrow one. And I don't know why we want to sign an agreement, or why they would even want to sign an agreement that has no benefit for them. And the other part of what I saw is the contract for dumping for going to the landfill in Helena is up in June, and I viewed that as something that they would want. They would agree to that, and then hold that over our head as when we want to go to our contract where we're going to dump.
But we needed to have an MOU with the city of Helena in order to use their hook truck, and we had nothing with them.
So you're saying Helena has a hook truck, but the county does not?
Correct, and that's why the MOU is with the city of Helena, because they have the truck, hook truck, and then they also have a tractor trailer if we needed to go that route, if our truck and trailer broke down, either or, and we needed to get something. Why they have 5, 6 truck and trailers, so they don't use them all, so there's some that can be used. And I guess, if you're talking about benefits, I mean, they get our garbage. That's a benefit.
What if we don't? What if we go to Tri-County for the next contract?
Then we go to Tri-County.
Well, then what's the use of having an MOU with the city of Helena if we're not dumping our garbage there? What's the benefit to them then?
Well, if we were still using them, it would be a benefit, because, so we go back to Tri-County and they let us use a truck just like the city was gonna let us use a truck. Why, they're doing it out of good faith, just like the city of Helena's doing it out of good faith. So why would we wanna then use Tri-County's truck if we don't wanna use the city of Helena's?
We end up leasing out of Tri-County anyway. We could have leased out of Helena also. So it wouldn't make much difference that way.
I'd asked Commissioner Fulford about if I needed to request a bid from City of Helena to rent the truck, and Commissioner Fulford's advice was that they wouldn't be allowed to do that without an MOU, and since the MOU wasn't done, then I requested a bid for a quote from Tri-County. Tri-County offered to let us borrow it for free. Once again, I don't believe in free in business, so I requested a fair rental rate, and they gave us the quote of $250 a day for the rental rate. So that's why we paid the rental rate with Tri-County.
Right.
Because once again, I didn't want to get into a position where if they let us borrow stuff for free, there's this understanding that when it comes time to bid for a contract, that there's the potential for anybody holding anything over our head. So we paid a rental rate.
And that's fine, it didn't matter. What I was thinking of for the MOU was just to protect the people of Broadwater County. If we have the hook truck to go down and the semi go down like it did this year, we could have been hurting too if we, if Tri-County didn't have a hook truck that they would have been able to give us, and we knew that Helena had outfits. It just made sense, like the semi and the trailers, they've got like 6 of them. And they only use 3 at a time, so it makes sense if we could use them for a little while just to get back on our feet. And that's the only thing I was looking at, is if we ran into a hard spot and really needed something. If the commissioners don't feel like we need to do an MOU, that's fine too, because we'll probably be doing another RFP pretty soon. But I just didn't want to get into that position where we really had to go do something or find something and maybe not be able to get it to use for the county. So that was my opinion. So what do you want us to do, Mike? Forget it?
What's that?
You want us to forget the MOU then?
I don't see any reason to have it until we get done with a new contract.
Take a look for 6 months.
Well, in the meantime, what I'll do is I'll talk to the Helena City Attorney, and I will find out what exactly is the settlement and the restrictions on their equipment use, if there is any outside the city limits, because Tri-County's telling me there is a restriction there, and if we know there's a restriction, then we don't want to walk into that, get smacked with it. But I'll find that out from the city attorney from Helena, so we know future purpose what that looks like.
Okay, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
So revisit the topic again and after the contract's ordered, so it'd probably be the our end of July meeting. We should have by then new contract should be, the RFP package should have gone out in bids and all the rest. So
Is our contract up in June or is it in the end of
from what
2021?
From what I was told today, it's end of June.
When do you think you're going to put your stuff out?
I talked to once again to Commissioner Fulford and said he didn't, or Commissioner Delger didn't believe that it needed an RFP that would just be able to put out to bid. And then from that point, it should be, if we put out for bid, there's really only Republic Service, Tri-County, and Lewis and Clark County, or city. There are 4 of the lands billed for the bids. You got Logan and then Tri-County and Lewis and Clark. So it should be a pretty easy process of getting 3 bids.
So what's the difference between putting out an RFP and just putting out bids?
You'd have to ask Commissioner Fulford, or Commissioner Delger for the specifics. I'm still fairly new. Mike?
What's that?
The difference in the process between RFP and then putting out for bid.
Well, I don't see any reason to have an RFP, we just need to know what the price per ton's gonna be. It just goes out to a bid just like any other project that you would put a bid on.
So why did we do an RFP last time?
I really don't know why we did an RFP, because that's what they wanted us to do, because we were dealing with another local government. Maybe we may have to do that if we're doing with another local government. I'm not sure what the guidelines are there. I don't see why we just don't go out to bid.
Can we find out what we
Yep.
need to do? Is that up to you, Corey?
Well, I'll look at that and see. I mean, it's, how much money a year is it? It's a lot of money, right? Total per year? I mean, I'm sure it's well above the competitive bidding threshold, but it's different. It's almost like we're paying for a service rather than a contract to perform a service, so.
Yeah, it's a few
What
hundred.
about the southern part of the county? Does everything in the southern part does it still go north, or, I mean,
They're on their own.
Yeah, they're outside of
They're
our
a different
solid waste
district.
district.
where's the line?
101, Highway 101,
South of Toston?
yeah.
So that, do you guys still have the Tosca canister site?
The Toston and the Raidersburg site.
And you guys haul those north?
Yep.
They go north, yeah. We had, back when Mr. Slifka was county commissioner, we had a meeting down with the south end down there. It didn't turn out so well. So, we have left them go to the Gallatin County down there.
Okay.
They're outside of the solid waste district altogether.
Okay, any other discussion?
Can I take off?
Yep, thank you. Okay, so the recyclable oil, how are we on that?
I was looking into it. Actually, the cubes that you were talking about, I've talked quite a bit with Commissioner Fulford about it. Having a used recyclable oil holding tank in a floodplain at Cedar Street seems like not the best idea to me. So I've been pursuing getting cubes and being able to move them, have the recyclable oil be at the transfer station on Cedar Street. That way, part of the problem that we've been getting is it's much more than recycled oil has been being dumped in there. There's solids that are in there. There's antifreeze that's been in there. There's bad gas that's in there. And the reason why the previous contractor decided not to work with us anymore is there's enough solids in that tank that it was burning the pumps up on his machine multiple times. It started to become very costly for him. And we're still trying to get a vendor to remove the last bit of recycled oil that's in there, but I've been trying to get a vendor to work with just the cube idea to where they can pick up the cube, haul the cube off, drop an empty cube for us. And that way, if it's at the transfer station, it's a little more regulated there than it is. And part of the problem is where it's at now, it's not locked up at night, so people can go through the after hours gate and they can dump whatever they want there. It's at the transfer station, it's locked gate at night, and then that service would be provided when the transfer station's open. But that's kind of the direction I'm working with that.
I spent a considerable amount of time in Reno, Nevada, while I was in the Guard and the military and whatnot. And one of the, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen that here in Montana, but one of the things that they do in Nevada was each automotive place has a giant tank in the back. And so people in the city who are going to dump their oil don't actually take it to any county place at all. It actually goes to a private business, to like an auto parts store who has that thing in the back. But it's well maintained, and that's what makes that feasible for them, is that they have like a log, an oil recording log, as well as a video camera on that site, so that there was a discrepancy in what people were dumping. They not only have that person logged, but have them, when they logged on a sheet of paper. And so that could be a possibility too, is having somebody, sign their name that says, hey, I'm dumping this amount of oil, because that liability stops people from doing illegal things as well. Just having to say, hey, I'm doing this, and if they got caught lying right there, there's a penalty for that. So that, a log could help.
And I agree. And I'd actually talked to Chairman Hahn about that. There are small businesses around here that have recycled oil burners for their heat sources. I know Rocky Mountain Small Engine Repair, Josh Peters' shop does it. There's a lot of the local businesses that do accept it. And that was one of the short-term things, or solutions that we've come up with while we're trying to find a new vendor that's willing to take it. But as it currently is, it really does have to move from Cedar Street. The groundwater level is so low there. If we get a heavy rain year, just having an used oil collection site in an area that is prone to standing groundwater is probably not the smartest or correct idea.
Have you talked to the other ones, like, was it Josh Peters, did he burn it, I think?
He's actually talked with our road department before and asked if he could have our old oil. So I know that he is actively searching out for areas, because it reduces his heating bill for his shop.
Mm-hmm. John Hedstrom, does he also burn?
I'm not sure if Hedstrom's does or not.
How many gallons a month do we typically get of used oil?
It fluctuates, it honestly does. We've had where we've had to have it pumped less than a month, and then there's sometimes it'll go 2.5 months before it has to be pumped. Part of the problem is now is there's enough sediment and solids in that tank that about a third of the tank is full of sediment, and that's why it's burning up their pump. So we're gonna have to figure out how to get that tank clean and eventually and discontinue it altogether.
And wasn't it costing us $1,900 to get that pumped out?
Mm-hmm.
And is it still that we cannot give that oil to, like, Josh Peters or whoever?
I'm not certain, but I know that they wouldn't want that because it's not as highly regulated, and I know there's a lot of fluids that get put in that tank that they're, even though they're petroleum based, it wouldn't be good in this burner.
You know, I did foreclosure work in Nevada, and I had ran across a 50-gallon barrel of oil that I had to dispose of, which was incredibly difficult. And I ended up doing the same thing, finding a shop, and I was surprised that the standards for that are not very high for that burner. So it'd be something definitely to check with them as far as what they can. I think it is a solid issue,
Yep.
but as far as the contaminants, I don't think that's an issue. So when people add other garbage in there, I don't think that's an issue for them. The guy that I talked to when I dumped it made it sound like that. It burned whatever, but it just couldn't have like chunks of stuff in it, like definitely not. So it'd have to be like refined or something, or screened before we gave it to anybody. I think that would work. I mean, I've dumped oil there before, and one of the big deals is that that's a diamond plate that's about this big.
Hmm.
And so particles, anything bigger than that can still go down in there. So a finer screening mesh would certainly help that process, definitely. You know, and if the mesh gets dirty, maybe that'd be something of maintenance that has to be done on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that would certainly refine that oil right at the entry point.
Yeah, and I think most of those burners have a pretty good filter system on them too, that they can burn some pretty.
And once we get it moved up there and we go to the cube process, that'll solve a lot of the solids, especially if it's in a more regulated space where it's a little more closely watched. I mean, right now, once again, there's access to it in the 24-hour access, so people can go after hours and dump there, and that's, I'm reasonably certain, where we're getting the majority of our solids. When we have the attendant there, I don't believe that's near as a problem, but once unmanned.
Would it be reasonable to do away with that collection entirely and just go around and find anybody that can use it and just post a list of names and numbers to call for people to dispose of their oil?
That's what I've talked to Mr. Holm about, because it is quite costly for the county to be able to have that pumped and taken care of, and we've been looking at trying to find if there is a cost-effective alternative that still provides that, but yeah, I've been exercising that avenue as well.
Yeah. We know that
that service hasn't been available for a couple of months, and I've only had a single call on, a citizen with concerns. So I believe that the recycled oils is being, it's not as big of an issue to not have it as what it may have seemed.
Like I said, I go to the dump too often, and that's why I'm here, because I've invested in it. And I've personally witnessed people bypassing the oil thing at this point, being closed and dumping it in the dump. Just taking their stuff and dumping it with their garbage, and you would never know different. There's just oil on top of the garbage. So that's actually what's happening. That's the alternative. So unless you put a big sign that says "Don't dump here," and people know that beforehand, they don't bring their oil there. Because I can tell you, someone that comes with a big truck of oil or whatever, that they're changing the oil, and they come up to the dump and it says, "I'm not taking oil." Where are they going to take it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no rational point to place it, so the only real place to put it is keep it at the dump. And so that's what people are doing. They're dumping it in the trash. So it's not like people have found a different place to put it. They're putting it just right next door because it's convenient for them. So, there's got to be like a path that people know beforehand, so that they show up and know that it's not open. I think that's important, because when people go there and think, oh, I'm gonna bring these gallons of oil in the back of my truck and they show up and it's closed. What do I do with these gallons of oil? My truck's dirty, like, and that's where that process, they start cheating. And that's where people in the city throw it down the drain.
And that's why we're leaning towards the cubes, that they don't have to pump it on site. They can pick it up with our forklift or the loader, set it in their trailer, and they drop us off an empty cube. So that way we still can provide the service, so it's not getting dumped on a road or in the trash or on people's weeds all over the county, that we're still actively providing that service, but we just have to do it in a little more regulated way and in a better environment, somewhere outside of places that get lots of standing water.
Yeah, I think once we start out with the new container, it'll probably be better. I would, if you could find out if we could give that oil to locals here, that would be great. Because that'd be the way to go if we could. If we can't, then I think we should pursue something else where we can divert that oil back to the guys that burn it. It'd save us money in the long run, I think.
I agree.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Okay, equipment and facility repairs.
So this line item had been on there because of our transfer station truck. We did get it back. It did not need a full in frame. It ended up just being a spacer plate on, and so it was about half of the estimate, or half of the cost that we were concerned at, and they initially quoted us anywhere from 15 to 19. It came in under 9 for the repairs, so the transfer station truck is back up and running. But we do have an older dump truck on the roadside that had been tipped over, and that a tweak to the frame. With that, we've been looking at quotes, and that's kind of going down to new business a little bit with the additional transfer station hook truck. We're looking at about 5,000 to 7,000. We do have an additional fifth wheel plate already, so that Kenworth dump truck is actually a very good running. It's got a drop axle. We're going to most likely be mounting the fifth wheel plate to it. So, and since it's a road department truck, but we'll be using it primarily for solid waste, it'll be a public works vehicle. It'll no longer be a road department vehicle, or so it can be used for either entity at that point. They're both underneath my shell roads and solid waste, but for $7,000 we'll be able to have an in-house backup that doesn't take a vehicle that's actively being used by the road department. So I mean, it's a very cheap alternative for us to have a second piece of equipment. We actually did really well on our recyclable metal in July, and we have a substantial amount of recyclable metal again. We made roughly 40,000 when we recycled the first time, and judging by the size of the pile, we should have another 10 to 15 there currently. Market prices are up quite a bit now. So I'm going to be looking to vendors to try to sell that and use some of that funding to purchase a used hook truck. So then we would have a second one in-house, wouldn't have to ask for any additional funding from the community or anything else. We wouldn't have to worry about MOUs or borrowing anything. And this will help plan for growth. Like I said earlier, we've had over 250% growth rate in 2020 over 2019. There's 8 more subdivisions on the books, and with the way it is now, we're eventually going to need a second hook truck. Even if we went and all the way back to open unmanned sites, with the growth of the county, one driver is not going to be able to keep up with it if we keep all outreach cans. So knowing that we will eventually need 2, I think I've looked online to try to find some used hook trucks, and we can get a used truck from anywhere from $22,000 to $36,000. And knowing that it is a used truck, I mean, it'll get us X amount of years, but that's X amount of years while we work to get back to the black. So I think it would be in our best interest to kind of help plan for future growth and get us some in-house alternatives, so we're not paying that $250 a day for rental or whatever, however it ends up shaking out. We have all of that in-house. We do have the funding there from recycled metal, I think we need to take advantage of that. Initially, I really pushed for a scale, but judging by the state of our equipment and the amount of repairs that we've had this year, I think we don't really have a choice at this point but to start investing in some extra equipment.
And the scale depends on how we go forth, I guess, on
Yes.
if we do much for changing the things. So,
One of the other things I have talked with Great West Engineering, they're going to be doing a professional engineering review of the Cedar Street side and the transfer station side. As you know, the wing wall down there at Cedar Street has started to push a little bit, and that's been a concern in the past. WWC took a look at it and said it wasn't an immediate need to fix. It is leaning a little bit farther, and the floor of the transfer station was recommended to be replaced in 2006. Mike, do you remember if that was it 06 they said that needed to be replaced?
No, it was later than that. When I first came on, it would have been 16.
Or 16, so it's been quite a while, so it's never been replaced. There is, Great West Engineering is exceptional at grant writing. They have 87% first time go success rate, so I want them to give me an estimate for repairs and then kind of take a look at what grant funding we have, and that may be able to help give us some better options to where, so we're not continuing to put Band-Aids on our projects, and grant funding, if we can get a Fed grant for it or a state grant for it to help us to make some significant upgrades instead of just kind of patching things together like we have been running for a lot of years, I think we'll be a lot better off.
I know I was around when they looked at the transfer station slab up there, and I think they were anticipating it was going to be like $100,000 to replace that. And I know Mike was up there and looked at it. We didn't feel that it was an issue at that time, and that's why I think Franklin pushed for the rubber lip on the bucket at that time, because we were figuring it was wearing the concrete down. So I don't know if that's helped or not.
Bob Church, the guy that actually initially designed the transfer station up there in the 90s, he's actually working for Great West Engineering now. He's the one that came up and took a look at it, and it's still his opinion that it does need to be replaced. I mean, we're 5 years down the road, and it hasn't got significantly worse, but I mean, in his opinion, it still does need to be replaced. But I requested a kind of a full professional engineering evaluation of it.
Because we had spent $20,000 on it before, I think, looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't think that they would have to redo that or re-look at it, maybe since it's been now a while. But I think the issue was because it was kind of cantilevered over there, and if the loader would happen to malfunction or whatever, I guess, and end up on that lip, and that would be the issue, is the loader would end up in the truck or in the trailer at some point. But I don't know if there's any other issues. I guess I would have to leave it up to commissioners on that. I had one suggestion on the one at Cedar Street, thinking about saving money. If it's just tipping a little bit, if you could dig back with a backhoe, make some trenches, or a trench or whatever, and then drill through the concrete and put plate on the other side, and then anchor it back in the driveway, if that would hold it, because I hate to have to replace all of that. If it's just tipping a little bit, I would think you could even maybe dig alongside of it and push it back and then tie it back in.
It's tipping far enough now, it's starting to impact the concrete slab the 40-yard cans are sitting on, and it's lifting the 40-yard cans. That's why my goal out of this is I want them to give me an estimate of what repair for the bolt of it is, and then I would like to someday have a transfer station at Cedar Street with pin pad access to where people could go 24 hours in and out of the gates there. And I mean, that's the closest central site for the vast majority of Broadwater County residents. And if we could do something like that through grant funding, where we're only paying a portion of it and the vast majority of it's paid through grant, I don't want to speak too much on it, because that's kind of if and kind of thing. If Great West can help us out, but They are exceptional grant writers. That's part of why the commission and the committee chose to go with them, is they have a greater than 80% first-time success rate on grants. So Bob Church and Carly Ekwitz, they were reasonably certain that they rattled off like 3 grants right off the top of their head, and one of them was a TSEPS grant, and they said, Broadwater County hasn't had any in several years, so we would be higher on the priority list out of Montana counties to be able to get it. So they were pretty hopeful that we would be able to get some grant funding to help out.
Well, some of those grants are matching funds too, so you'd have to have.
Well, they're usually, this one would be a 75-25% grant, but if we had grant funding to cover 3/4 of the cost, that gets us a heck of a long ways towards a significant improvement.
Yeah. You go to transfer station, you're gonna talk millions of dollars there.
If you were to do a full-size one, I believe we don't need any, like Lewis and Clark's or City of Helena's is beautiful, but Townsend is significantly smaller than City of Helena. I don't believe we need anything near that scale. So, and that's kind of what the PER is, so they can give me some estimates. Is at this point we don't have exact costs. We don't have exact costs of repairs. We don't know what the wing wall repair would cost us. We don't know what it would cost to have a small scale transfer station there. So their review will kind of cue that all off. That'll be early this spring because the TSEP grants are due, I believe, the end of June, and they're awarded, I think, the second week of July. So if the TSEPs, or if they can, or if their evaluation shows that it's going to be a significant cost to repair and it's an immediate need, then that might warrant going after some of these other grants to see if we can make an improvement and what the cost of our match would be compared to the cost of having to foot the bill for significant maintenance. Because excavating a large portion of Cedar Street's dirt ramp to do a major replacement on the concrete retaining walls, I can't imagine would be all that cheap either. I'm not an engineer, so that's why I reached out to the engineers and got getting their professional opinion.
I think the engineering costs we had before when, I don't know if it was Bob Church that was here or not.
Yeah, when Bob was here and we were talking about the transfer station down here and just helping out with grants, just for helping out with grants, it was to be $14,000.
I think 15,000. So that was money we'd have to come up with, I think, unless they build it into a grant some way.
Looks like you're paying for a discount, right? It's kind of what it is. You're paying into something with the hope that you're going to later save that more than that amount of money. But that's the thing. It's an if, right? Because if they don't get the grant, you still pay the money.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a risk right there. I mean, if they really think that they can get it beforehand, they sell that, then maybe. But they're selling it because they're getting money for the sales. So I mean, it's like of course, the used car dealership tells you every car is the best car there,
At the time of choosing them, they were able to get $248 million so far in grants and correct me if I'm wrong, they only work with local government and counties. Great West does, so I mean, and they have a lady who one of their grant writers used to work for the Department of Commerce, so they're very well up to date on what needs to be in a successful grant packet. They were able to do one of the projects they shared was the city of Conrad wanted to put in a pavilion. It was a match grant type deal. They also actually were able to pull in some other grants to cover the match portion, so the city of Conrad was able to complete their project at no cost to them. So these guys are
well, the cost of the
greater than the cost of the engineering
right,
fee, but when you look at several $100,000 project
right. So you're
versus
buying that. It's like buying the AAA benefit. You get the benefit afterwards, but you got to buy into it first.
Right.
And I can't remember, Josh, when we were discussing this one with Mary and Bob was here, and I can't remember if it was an April or a May meeting when we were discussing this, but he was talking about a time frame where if we wanted him to look at this grant or a couple of them, that he could get it done. It was almost like July was like when this stuff had to be in, where if we could do it sooner so that he's got more time, he said that he would have a better success rate than we were kind of pushing our time length. And so then it was like, well, we don't know, but he said I could do it for the next time, but he's like, if you're looking for it right now, it almost seemed like we needed to go months sooner so that he had time to work on it. And
that was actually his suggestion to do. That's why we're going to look to do the PER in March. So then that gives him, several months before the packet's due at the end of June, and then it's reviewed and grants are awarded. From what he was saying in July, so it does give him that time to work, or their grant writers to work on that.
It seemed like there was only 2 or 3 grants that we could look for our situation, and it seemed like the one we were after was funded every other year, was it, or was it every year?
I believe that's the TSEPs, isn't it, Mike? That's every other, and that's the one that he's hopeful for, and it is open this year.
Okay.
Commissioner Fulford he's online, and he did have a comment when they were talking about the contracts that are for bid, and he said the other option is extending the current contract. So he just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that with Lewis and Clark County, instead of going through the RFP or a bid, one of the options is extending the current contract.
I was looking at the old notes, and it looks like he finished the RFP in December, and they determined who won the contract at the end of March, as far as the time frame.
What was the end of March?
It said, we will reward, the RFPs will be reviewed and awarded March 30th. So I don't know if we followed that time frame, but that was what was intended. Because it begins on the fiscal year, July 1st.
Okay.
That's why I lean on the commissioners for their guidance on RFPs and bids. So that's outside of my lane. So Commissioner Fulford and Commissioner Randolph and Commissioner Delger, they'll keep me in line with the timeline. If we have to do an RFP or if it is open to bid, they'll advise me on the timing of that.
I know last time when we did the RFP, I figured it'd be over in a month or two, and it was a year. So, wasn't fun. Okay. So do we need to make a motion to go ahead and deal with Bob Church and Great Western?
If you'd like, he's going to come out to do the RFP, or not the RFP, the professional engineering review, just so we know what we're dealing with, so I can bring that information back to you.
Okay, so we can
Because
wait.
The last review we had was half a decade ago, and we know that the wing wall has tipped more since then. It's several inches higher than the back wall. So I guess when I get that information, I can bring it to you, and then you guys can make a motion and advise on the direction you would like to go.
Okay.
Great. Fred, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Are we talking about a cement retaining wall, like a big cement wall, and the lips have become offset, and therefore creating a situation of like an off balance?
Yep, the whole east side of the retaining wall at Cedar Street, it's the entire north-south section, and then it has 45-degree angle wing walls that come off of that. That's all one solid piece on the east side, and it is heaving and leaning, and it's starting to separate from the back portion of the wall.
Now, warehousing districts, like big warehouses, pour like a tremendous amount of cement, and then run hard tire forklifts inside of the warehouses, and when you run those hard tires, you know, it makes the transition so much harder than a soft tire. And so they would send in engineers in there, or, you know, maintenance or whatever, and they take cement grinders, and they would grind that lip off so that it was smooth. I didn't know if that was something that could be done, or you take a big cement grinder, you know, literally chop that lip off and grind it so that she's smooth. And I know that's not a fit, you know, that's a Band-Aid by far, but that certainly is what I've seen in the past of smoothing cement is using a grinder.
The lip's out of the line of traffic. It is on the top of the retaining wall, but it's behind the shack where you can really see it. The concern is the wall is leaning, and eventually it could lose structural integrity and tip. And at that point, you risk damaging cans, or there's, you know, a concern that if it does fail and somebody's parked up there to throw their trash away, that it could be an incident. So
Is it just because that area is that glacial slide area right there at the base of the limestone? Is that why that's moving?
Probably a high water table there, and its ground probably isn't as stable as it could be.
So all that area that they're building on over there in the, you know, on that flat and rattlesnake and whatnot is all that slide that came down, that tilling that came down from when the glaciers were up there. And so it's just constantly moving and working its way down to the base of the valley. And so it's going to have like X amount of movement, X amount a year, you know. So if you were like stick a post in the ground, so to speak, and take a picture of it, X amount of years that post to be over here.
Yeah, I don't think that's a situation here. I think it's more of a...
I think from a lot of it's from people backing up to it, repeatedly bumping up against the angle iron that's sitting on top of it, and they've had repeated vibration over the years, and it's just causing, and as the ground settles and we have subsidence and frost heaving in anywhere that's typically a wet area, I think kind of a combination of all those factors that we're starting to see that wall tip.
So it can't really be fixed as much as it just needs to be completely re-engineered and report. Like
well, and that's, I'm not sure if the engineers may have a fix. They may be able to drive steel pylon to support the wall to keep it from failing any farther. And so that's kind of why we're reaching out to them to see what our options
So
are.
it goes, can be from anywhere from them recommending a Band-Aid to them recommending a complete overhaul.
And that's, I won't really have any, or I need to get that so I can bring it back to the board so they can they can vote and give me some guidance on the direction the board feels that we should go.
Okay, I think we need to move on here. We'll just wait for your report on that. Yeah, I don't know, we get a chance to look at any of this stuff here too, but do you have any idea right now where we are on expenses? Are we?
Right now, we're greater than half the year through, and we're sitting at 50% spend. There are some higher avenues in there, but as it balances out, we're on the expenditure side, we're running about 50% spend. On the revenue side, we're sitting at 97% of revenue that was estimated has been recovered for the year at 7 months in, but that's due to the large amount that we got for our recycling pile. So it's, you know, we did get an extra 40,000 that when we recycled. So that's accounting for that larger step towards our yearly estimate for revenue. But like I said, it's in my belief that we should use that to the additional revenue that we gained this year that's kind of above and beyond what we had estimated to do some equipment up, or to purchase additional equipment. This is kind of they didn't sell for a couple of years, so we had a large stockpile because the markets were way down. So we ended up selling when it was starting to get pretty high, and we did well. And I think this additional funding that's in there that we weren't budgeting for, this is a great opportunity to be able to upgrade some of our equipment without having to request additional funding.
So we should be still getting some revenue in May before the end of the fiscal year. I don't remember how much that usually is. That's mobile homes.
When I was talking to
the
accountants, they said the realization of the line item for the solid waste assessment, it's not an exact dollar true reflection of it, because of the second half of the assessment doesn't hit until May. But so far if they base their estimate on what was paid the first half, if they roll that to what the estimate is for the second half, we should be sitting currently at 97% complete, and then we still have all the rest of the money we bring in through the fees from solid waste.
So this is the whole fiscal year's worth here, basically. Yeah, I think that's what they told me before, which
Yep.
is hard to, for me, it's hard to budget for, I guess.
And that's why the end of year review is really your legitimate review. This is kind of forecasting and estimates at the
Right.
6-month mark,
Yeah.
but we are definitely ahead of schedule on the revenue side this year.
Okay, so it, yeah, it looks like we're ahead of what the budget is for the expenditures, so, but not much. So,
And a lot of that is we've had virtually every piece of equipment solid waste has had this year has had a major repair, and the repair portion has been, we would be sitting much better off if we wouldn't have had the hook truck lose the turbo, the transfer truck, and then we had to replace just major repairs on that, both the excavator and the loader.
yeah.
Those repair costs have eaten into a lot of the extra good we've done this year, but at the end of the day, we're still ahead of schedule because we're at 50% spend, and we're virtually 7 months in now into a 12-month cycle. So we haven't made as the repair cost is what chipped away at the larger underage we were running this year.
So if you decide to buy a hook truck, another hook truck, then we'd probably be in the red again.
If we bought the hook truck, like I said, it would come out of the extra revenue that we've gained this year by selling the pile, and we're trying to capitalize on the market being even higher than it was in July.
And that metal is already in here, right?
Yep, and it actually, I talked to Michelle about that when it was invoiced to the treasurer's office. Even though there's a line in there for salvage, sale of junk or salvage, that's showing it didn't get, that 40,000 didn't get put on the right line item. They put that on the disposal charge.
Okay.
And Michelle's working to correct that to where it's reflecting on the correct line item. That's why it shows we're at 273% of our disposal estimate. We didn't just we didn't bring in all that extra. That got put on the wrong line item.
Okay.
But we had even initially only estimated the sale of junk or salvage being at 15,000, and we brought in nearly 40,000. So we're still, and just off of the first sale.
Okay. And I don't see any container rental
The
income
container
here.
rentals, once again, a lot of that, everything's kind of at the treasurer's office. I'm working with them. All of that is being, the revenue's being reflected on the disposal charge and not on the container rentals or the sale of junk. That's why that one line item appears to be that we're doing so well in that one extra, because all of our revenue is getting back to that line item.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully you get that fixed.
Yep.
What would you estimate the container rental income as?
I would honestly imagine that is the difference, probably about 12,000 right now, the difference between what we sold and what it's reflecting right now at the 52,000. Because the container rentals, what I saw when I took over, that container rental, since it comes with the disposal charge, they've been lumping all of that on that line item. So the difference between what we sold in junk and what it's reflecting is the total on disposal. I would guess that is our rental, or basically the revenue from our rental vans.
About 12,000. Okay. How many cans do we normally have to rent out?
Right now, it depends. It did help that that my predecessor purchased those, the 30-yard cans to replace the initial 20s that were there. So we have anywhere usually right around 6 at any time, but some of those are at longer term rentals. So
Okay.
we do, right now, we have to, I believe we pulled one to replace one of the cans that we had that was just, we patched so many times it was beyond repair anymore.
I was just thinking the other night, I know most of those new cans went into where the man gates are.
Walk-in cans.
So that should take some pressure off the other cans. Would it be possible to pull a can, like, was it Winston that has 4 cans?
Winston has 4.
Besides the man gate?
But even on the days that they're open, they fill a can a day, a 40-yard can a day, so it still needs the 2 C&D cans.
But it's only open 2 days a week, isn't it?
It is, and they fill a 40-yard can each day.
But there's
On
4
C&D.
cans there, I'm just wondering if you couldn't.
One of them's a metal can, and one of them's a leave, or a brush and leave can, so if we pull any one of those, that means increased sorting when it gets back to the facility on the 40-yard cans.
Okay.
And that's why they've had the 4. That's our highest trafficked one, so they said with X amount of volume, it makes sense to be able to separate larger in bulk there.
And what about the other satellite sites?
Dry Gulch is our least used can as of right now, but with the larger scale subdivision, it's supposed to be going in, if it's approved, going into lower, is it? I'm not sure if it's approved yet, but there's one in the books to be on Lower Confederate, a fairly large subdivision there, so it'll definitely have increased traffic there. And Towson and Rayersburg, it kind of depends on the week.
Do they all have 4 cans?
2.
Just 2 cans?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I was thinking there was 4 cans at each area. Okay.
Winston's seeing enough traffic, we do put 2 cans at the walk-in can, or through the walk-in gate, just because we end up pulling a full walk-in can almost every day.
During the construction season, are 6 cans enough, or could we use more containers?
Once again, it's kind of feast or famine. We've had times where we've had plenty of rental cans, and then all of a sudden everybody will want them all at the same time. And so I think currently I understand the need or the desire to have more revenue, but it also comes with an expenditure. When they purchased 6 cans, it was $50,000. I think,
But that was on a 10 or 15-year loan too. So you're not really paying that much per year on them.
but you pay interest.
Well, the interest isn't that much because it's only like, what, 1 or 2%? So if you can gain that much revenue over that amount of time, it'll pay for itself.
It would eventually they'll recoup their value.
Yeah. In the beginning, I had figured it, and I know you said that was probably pretty optimistic, it'd be paid for in a year and a half, even at 6 months rental.
I think I would, in my personal opinion, I would wait to purchase more until we kind of decide what our new path forward is, because on some of the methods, if we were to open, on one of the suggestions, open them all back up to the public, then there's no need for the walk-in cans. So then that, we would have additional cans right there to be able to use for rental cans. So I think once we find this kind of a new path forward, at that point, it would be a good time to decide how many cans we have to work with, and then how many that leaves us for rental, and then decide if we need to, if purchasing more would be a benefit to us. But I think we got quite a few unknowns on the path forward still as we finish up doing the kind of the financial analysis of where we're at currently and what's working and what's not working for us.
Hopefully when we get a CIP, then maybe end up replacing some of the old cans that are getting too beat up too.
Yep.
Okay. Anything on, anybody else have any questions on the operations report or anything?
discuss the tipping fees and tonnage compared to last year.
Okay. Do you have some questions on it?
Well, so when exactly did we start with when did we start manning all of the?
That would have been the top line item you see in 18. At the end of that, that's when, I believe it was July at the tail end of the, or whatever, let me pull that up. So December is when, January that following year would have been when they went with Lewis and Clark County under the new contract, and that would have been kind of the initiation of the new path forward.
So January of 19.
Of 19. I'm just guessing off the tonnage. I wasn't here running it, so
Didn't
I
we
know
start in
that's when Lewis and
June?
Clark County we went
July.
to, so.
Yeah.
I think there was one, I think we started the 1st of June.
July.
No, I think it was the 1st
Was
of
it
June. I think there was 1 month before the end of the fiscal year, if I remember right.
So I guess through your numbers and your analyzation, how many tons per year do you think we're saving on tipping?
If you
Over
look
the
at
way
the-
it was before.
If you look at the total tipping cost, right now, like I said, you have to factor growth of the county in there too, so it's not an apples
Do you
to
have a
apples.
percentage of growth to be able to factor in there?
Well, I know that we had a 200, just on new building permits, we had a 250% plus increase from 19 to 20, just in that alone in the county. I don't currently have the census numbers to know how much by head count our county's grown. But I do know Nicole has provided that information to us that she's seen it's greater than 250%.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, so if you had to guess, figuring a little bit for increase in numbers, has the increase, or has the savings of tipping fees even come close to covering what we spend on manpower to man these sites?
Just tipping fees alone, no.
So have we seen any benefit to manning the sites then financially, or is it completely a negative from a financial standpoint?
From a financial, I don't see a significant benefit to it. What my understanding was when it was initially pitched, it was out of county, and that we had or out of county or out of state dumping, and to help, it was causing a lot of the overage on the increase in tipping fees. It was also, like Mr. Hahn had said, that Mako there was the concern of our canisters being a non-regulated confined space, and if somebody got hurt in there, would the county be liable? And then it was supposed to be a reduction in sorting materials at the transfer site.
Have we really seen that?
If there was no walk-in cans, you would see that, but having a walk-in can with nobody there, then as I go out, I could make a lap through them most of the time in the morning. There'll be a dishwasher in the can, or there'll be a tire in the can. So the sorting still happens on the floor for all of our walk-in cans.
Yeah.
And those are, like I said, Winston is pulled daily, so there is still sorting going on. There's not sorting out of the 40-yard pile, because those are, or the 40-yard cans, because those are, when access is available to those, we have an attendant there, so that part is reduced, but the walk-in cans, we still have to sort all those.
Go ahead.
So it sounds like at this point it would be financially beneficial to return things to the way they were without manned
We were
satellite stations.
When I took over initially, we were profitable, but it wasn't we were profitable for the first time in a long time, but it wasn't by.
Right, it was because we increased the tax revenue.
It wasn't by the amount that was estimated.
Mm-hmm.
And like Mr. Hahn had said, they initially estimated it was 2 to 3 years we'd be back out of the hole. And judging by the revenue, it was kind of nice, I came in June 1st, so I got to be there when we did the full budget review, and I got to take an exact look at the totals. And from that, if I were to base our progress off of what the revenue we gained, it would be 10 years, if we didn't have any significant repair or replacement needs, we would have the funding there to pay off the loan in a 10-year period.
Yeah. So if we were to go back to the way it was without the manned sites, that 10 years could become a shorter time period.
Yes. I mean, you look at man-hour costs, if you were to remove the attendant man-hour cost, all of that would go directly towards the overage.
So it seems to me that it would be, yeah, at least in my opinion, it looks like we should go back to the way it was then.
I've suggested that before, but I was voted down before, so I don't know. It'd probably be up to commissioners if they think we could do that legally.
I know it's hard to make government smaller, but if it's financially beneficial, why would we not?
So then what would we do with all the heaters and the shops and stuff like that? Would we put it up for auction to get rid of it to get our money back, or is it just gonna sit there? And then what do we do with then the scavenging that'll start in the metal cans and all the places? Then what are we gonna do with that?
With that, we would have to have camera systems. And I know that was one of the concerns that my predecessor had brought up or one of the options was power and camera, but you don't have to have power lines brought to everything. You know, solar is amazing. You can take, I mean, that's a fairly cheap alternative
I
anymore.
mean, do you think, I mean, just having a manned site, I mean, since we have a walk-in gate, do you really think there's any reduction in scavenging through the metal bin?
There's not.
There, you got the lids closed, so you wouldn't be able to get in there.
They're still opening them, popping them up.
I have a ton of footage of individuals that have gone and opened the lid after hours and crawled into cans, and I've worked with our sheriff's department on that. So, I mean, we didn't stop that. You know, they just go down and open the lid. So a lot of the lids have holes in them, or the expanded metal on the grating for the lid is tore or, you know, has been broken, and there's even times when they're crawling through the hole in the lid to get into the can. And there's a couple several groups that kind of have been going together for a while down there, and they're still accessing the cans. They just do it after hours.
So is that a liability issue then, still?
Very much so, and that's why there is an ordinance, but I guess what Daniel's trying to say is that the current practice hasn't stopped it.
Right, that doesn't matter whether or not it's unmanned or manned.
Yeah.
It's there either way.
I think that was original. One of the reasons was to stop that.
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, if it's still going on there, so they really can't sue you then, I guess, if they got hurt and if they were doing it on their own, or?
I'm sure it wouldn't stop them from trying.
I'm sure they can try, but right, if there's laws on the books, I mean, that's
We
the
have an
mission.
ordinance against it that's posted, you're not supposed to, we're actively monitoring it, so the county's at least taking steps to prevent it. So I think, unfortunately, Corey's not here to weigh in on that portion, but we are actively trying to prevent it.
I know there's a lot of people who like to dumpster dive, so there's that much less stuff we have to haul off. But
That's kind of my opinion too, but I do realize there's a liability issue.
Except for they throw it all on the ground.
Yeah.
We've actually, the sheriff's department issued two tickets for violating the county ordinance for the individuals we were able to identify. One of them, when I pulled up there to do my checks and physically observed the individual in the trash can, and about a third of the contents of the trash, or of the walk-in can, was all around on the ground. They had just thrown it all out on the ground.
So what would the process look like to go back to the way we were if we wanted to save the taxpayers some money? How would the county go about doing that?
It would take a recommendation from you as the board, and then I would go to the commission with your recommendation, and I would see what their thoughts on it, and then we would have to, I imagine it's not a simple, because it does involve people's wages, and I think we'd probably have to consult Mr. Swanson as well, but if that's your recommendation, it would have to, if you initiated it, then if that was your recommendation, my step would be to go to the commission and let, and have discussions with them.
And before we have that motion, I would say that we should put our options down on a piece of paper, see what pros and cons are, what could be the possible savings, what could be the possible issues if we do get sued or whatever, or legal issues, stuff like that before we make that decision, so.
Is that something you could do a little legwork for us?
Again, I'll start that conversation. I'll talk with the commission and I'll talk with Corey to see if what legal issues are out there, and I'll bring, when I get some information together, I'll bring it back. I'll put that down under new business for the next month's board meeting, and hopefully I can get some answers back in time to discuss it further.
If you get something down on paper, before the next meeting, could you
I will email it out
email
to you.
it so we can study it anyway?
Yep.
A lot easier than looking at it at the meeting.
Okay, that's all I got.
Okay, questions, Chris?
So then I know in the past, quite a few years ago when we had, these issues and we wanted the sheriff's department to get involved, we didn't have anything like an ordinance or anything in writing, so they just basically, we can't do anything. So we physically got something
I do
where,
have an ordinance for dumpster diving, and there's an ordinance stating that anybody who's not in our solid waste district, if they're caught utilizing our facility, if they're caught dumping and they're outside of the district, we have an ordinance against that as well. And I've been able to work with our sheriff's department, and two people have been ticketed so far off of the ones that we've been able to accurately identify.
Maybe we could get some signage at the part there that says something about that's just kind of a statement that says that, kind of giving.
I thought there was signage that's got that on there.
Yeah.
So there's a reference to the ordinance there at the dump? I just didn't,
It's a
I guess I
state-
haven't seen that.
It's a
reference.
statement saying that you can't. I don't believe it references the exact ordinance on the sign, but there's a sign prohibiting it.
Most people don't pay attention to the signs anyway.
Right.
Unless
No.
they say you're going to jail or something. Everybody-
Well,
Well,
But
that
at
still
the very
don't
least,
stop
it's
them.
If we are enforcing it, word will get out, and I think that will help curb that.
I think we could have some community involvement that would help a lot. Like if I'm at the dump and I see somebody from Helen dumping, it'd be behoove of me to contact somebody and say, hey, I see these guys dumping, so that
And I
our
have,
community needs to step up and look out for these people who are doing these horrendous dumps like if that was the case, what they were doing.
I have gotten a handful of phone calls from our residents that have seen other people there that were obviously didn't have a visible tag. They were using the walking gate afterwards, and then I've started to investigate whether or not they were in or out. Part of the problem is we have a high growth rate, and not everybody, when they use the walking gate, has their hang tag visible. We have a lot of people from out of state that have moved into Broadwater County, so in the cases that I've seen, a lot of it is they just didn't have their hang tag visible.
One other thing too, I don't know if it has anything to do with, budget and financial update, I guess, but, have you been able to keep up with the new assessments on new construction and things?
I'm still working on, we're keeping up with it. I'm still working on trying to find a permanent, better fix, whether it's the assessments assigned when an address is given. But there's complications with that because you can have an address assigned to a lot and you may not build on it for X amount of time. So as they've been coming in, yes, before we issued the hang tag, we've been verifying that they paid their solid waste assessment for every single person that's moved in. We have access to Black Mountain where we can ensure that their solid waste assessment's been paid before they get a tag.
It was impressive that you were up on how many building permits there were.
69, there were 69 new building permits in 2019, and we were 250% over that.
Yeah. That's a good starting point.
We still need to come up with something to charge the people that put 4 or 5 campers on their lot with their friends and relatives and then not pay anything.
That's part of what I've I've talked with Commissioner Fulford quite a bit on whether there's a recreational assessment for, like, out at the silos, there's a lot of lots out there. They are using our facilities, but they haven't built on it. They just purchased the lot. They're parking their campers there. So that's one of the things we've talked about, but it's a fairly complex issue on assigning a percentage of a fee, but it is something that I've been in discussion with the commission about. And that's where we talked, if they were assigned an address until they build, could they pay, 40% of the assessment? It's kind of an ongoing talk we've had with Nicole and the commission on that, because there are a large amount of people that recreate in Broadwater County that own property here, and when they're on their way home, they're not hauling all their trash all the way back to Bozeman or Helena or wherever they came from. They're swinging into our facilities and using the walk-in gates.
I know there are some 6-month assessments on the books too, that maybe that would work.
Seasonal assessment.
Okay.
And that's where it would have been a percentage of the total yearly cost. 6 month would be 50%. So.
Anything else? Okay, I'm going to move into new business. I had asked for this development set of policy for the attendance, but if we decide to go a different route without attendance, then it's probably moot.
I think this one was, we need basically for our attendance to use for the free pile. We've suspended the usage of the free pile due to an incident, and I need to have a formal kind of SOP on how the free pile operates. It's something as simple as saying first come, first serve, no holds. And then that gives us the attendants some guidelines to use while they were there. And once we establish that, then I believe as long as I have your approval and the commission's approval, we'd be able to reinstitute the free pile. But as of right now, that's kind of been suspended until I get further guidance on that.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. There was also issues like we had dropped the $5 fee on large furniture, but from what I've heard, that they're not charging for anything now.
That's not true. We still get, I just turned in probably 30 or 40 tickets to our treasurer's office on Tuesday, and they've already been invoiced in.
Is that consistent though amongst all the attendants?
I can't say with 100% certainty because I'm not standing there 100% of the time, but judging by the amount of tickets we've got in for the $2, anywhere from the $2 tire to the construction or ag waste, then yeah, I believe it still is as consistent as it ever was.
What about mattresses? I've heard that they were letting mattresses go through there. Shouldn't they be charging for mattresses?
We aren't charging for mattresses. We're not required to pay an additional fee. The only thing that we're required to do is haul them separately currently. So it's not like we're being charged an additional cost for them. Before we used to be able to throw them in the can or in the transfer truck with all the rest of the solid waste to haul. Now Lewis and Clark has requested that we bring it in its own load. Okay. So it doesn't cost us anything more than an extra trip.
Yeah. Okay.
So we haven't been charging for that.
What about tires?
Tires, we still, when I talked, I believe in September, it was the determination of the board and from the commission that we still charge for that because we have X amount of pit that we're allowed to fill, and if we open it up and remove the fee, then the concern was we'd be flooded with tires and we would fill up our pit and then we'd be paying to dispose.
Okay. So they are getting charged for tires.
Refrigerators are still being charged for because of the free on disposal. So all the rest of the charges I've seen on the tickets as they come in. Okay. And judging from where we're at on our revenue, it hasn't negatively impacted us to remove the $5 fee because we were spending such a high dollar amount in time to process the claim, postage, stamp, all the rest, that $5 fee was ineffective. It was costing us more to issue it than it was that we were gaining on in revenue.
So if the $5 fee was that, how are we not losing money on a $2 fee?
We are, and that was why I requested initially to remove the $2 and the $5, but it was the understanding that our pit would only handle X amount, and if the $2 fee was removed, then
Maybe we need to up it to a 5 or 6 or 7, whatever it costs us fee.
it would get us closer. We're not writing nearly the volume of $2 fees versus what we were writing on the $5 fees, but I think, and we had discussed, I believe, the last time I was here, whether that needed to be raised or done away with, and I think it was the consensus of the board to leave that $2 fee out, because it's $2 fee for light truck, but then there's like semi and ag tires are different rates. So the kind of the consensus of the board was to leave it where it was for the tires, but the $5 large household fee, we went away from that, and our revenue is still doing fine. We're at 9, already recouped almost a full year's worth of revenue.
Okay. Did you ever implement a credit card machine?
Not as of yet, because we removed that $5 fee, and that was the majority of what we were charging. So we're still on the billing for that, or sending out invoices and billing, but that reduced about half the amount of invoicing and billing we did. So at that point, I kind of wanted to get a little bit longer to see what that's actually costing us versus what a credit card machine with the 3% fee and all the rest would cost us.
I thought it'd still be handy with even larger loads going up there. and stuff.
At the transfer station, I can still see definitely having one there. That's where your largest ticket dollar amounts are coming from.
Because then you wouldn't have to invoice, you shouldn't have to invoice, I wouldn't think.
Is there no way to associate costs to like a user number, like your pass number, and then to associate those costs, and then those costs be handled, more internally than externally how they are?
If we had a scale everywhere to where we could track total tonnage and all the rest,
Right.
but we would have to have a scale at every site, because your solid waste assessment gives you 3,000 pounds of solid waste, and that's a fixed dollar amount. So like you're talking about, if we had a scale, when you weighed in, regardless of what you had, it could go against your solid waste assessment balance, and then if you hit your overage, you could pay, but we would have to have a scale everywhere. Because even if we just had a scale at the transfer station, that doesn't catch all the rest of the, people, if they wanted to, could use a walk-in gate at Dry Gulch at that
How do you
point.
assess the $2 then?
By the attendants that are there. And we don't,
I guess that's what I'm saying, is couldn't the $2 be assessed onto an account, so to speak, your actual solid waste account, which is being generated for a tag?
and the way it was initially set up, to my understanding, was the assessment is for X amount of tonnage. The fees are for items that were outside of that tonnage, like the tire, since it's a separate disposal. The fridge, because of Freon, is a separate charge, and that assessment's just for normal C&D household waste.
But it has to be paid by a $2 bill with a credit card, right? That's kind of absurd,
Well,
I mean,
and that's-
on a business side, because that costs about that much to do that.
And that's a large part why I haven't proceeded with the credit card machines yet, because
Right.
I wanted to see what our slips were bringing us in, to see if it would be worth it on the fee side to make a worthwhile purchase. At the transfer station, you have higher dollar amounts because that's where our contractors go, so I could see having one there. But once again, I didn't want to jump in and purchase something and then be sitting exactly where you're at. You're paying $1.20 for a $2 fee by the time you get
Yeah.
done with your service cost.
$2 is not, when you're going to involve a credit card, $2 is not an acceptable amount.
It's usually gotta be $5 or more.
I mean, whatever, just to make it worth it. I mean, it's just almost seems silly that it's almost like you're definitely robbing Peter to pay Paul right there, It costs that much just to run the thing. Plus you're stopping people to do the whole thing, so that's man hours on just processing that part, So in the end, like, you gotta have some justification that for the whole thing, for the whole picture. And the $2 doesn't really make up. I mean, it's almost like you're checking off a block, but not really taking it serious.
See, that's why we got rid of the $5 one in the beginning, so.
And you'd be better off with a flat rate of 5 than you'd be with 2, a 5, a 7, and all these different numbers. Just saying, here's a flat rate for overage. If you don't got a scale, how do you know?
Good guess. Okay. Any other discussion on policy? So are you gonna do,
I'm gonna write an SOP up for the free plow,
okay,
just so our attendants have a guideline to go and there's no gray area.
right,
Or it's not up to personal interpretation between attendants.
right. Yeah, that's what I was hoping for. Board appointments. Okay, so I think everybody has sent in their letter of interest, except for maybe John Williams.
That's, as of the last commission meeting, that was the only one that hadn't submitted yet.
And I talked to him, and I had sent out an email, but he evidently hadn't gotten it. But it sounds like his job maybe pulls him away sometimes, so he's thinking, I sent a text to him to see if he'd actually sent one in, because I asked him to think about it. But he said that he may step down for a while. And like I said, I haven't heard from him, so I would assume that's probably what he was thinking of.
Okay.
And Dawn has submitted her letter of interest, and I said, well, maybe if we were still a full board, that she could be an alternate. But if John isn't, I would recommend that Dawn be reinstated as a board member. But I don't know if we need to wait.
That would be at the commissioner's discretion. That's not a decision that I would make, but that would be under Mr. Delger and Daryl and Debbie as well.
Yeah. And she's already submitted her letter of interest, so then we can wait and wait till the next meeting and see what happens with John.
I know Frank Davis had submitted his, and since he's a returning candidate for this cycle, you guys approved Frank for the solid waste board, but John's position, they didn't vote to fill that one because they were waiting to see if John was going to submit his or not.
John did think he wasn't due till next year.
According to Nicole, that was the list that she gave me.
Chris was,
She
his was
said that
wrong.
she had made an error and Chris wasn't as on there, and I don't know if you were.
Everybody was on there except
Yeah,
for me.
You or yourself, Daniel, and Chris ended up not being on there, I believe. But she had said that she had made an error to start with.
Okay, so it was just John and Frank that were
That's
actually
correct.
up. Okay, so we'll wait on that, I guess. I think we've already discussed the recyclable metal pile, paper recycling.
That one is one of the things to consider. We're paying a significant amount of money for paper recycling quarterly, greater than $150, which is by far higher than the $26 a ton that we pay. So it's something for the board to consider whether that's still a worthwhile venture when we're paying, we're getting nowhere near a ton worth of paper to recycle, and we're being charged a 300 or 400% more than what it does. On the price per ton for just regular C&D. We actually have made a little bit of headway on finding a vendor for cardboard that's willing to take it for free at no cost from at least Bob's, because it's already pre-baled coming out of there. So, and they would be interested in the aluminum cans as well. So Steve actually has been reaching out, trying to help me find vendors that would be willing to do it. So we are getting some options, at least that portion of the cardboard. If we choose to go that route, it wouldn't be at a cost to us where it was before, and that was the justification for going away from it. Once again, the recycling cost was very high. the price per ton for regular C&D was very low, and it just wasn't cost effective to do it. Well, we're in the same boat with paper, but it's actually a little more skewed because we're being charged a lot. We're not recycling anywhere near a ton, but the costs are pretty astronomical now. So
Still
it's something for-
$125 to
it's closer to 150 now,
150. If,
A month?
quarterly.
if we were to dump that paper in the canister, I assume it's probably already getting paper, or paper being dumped in the canisters?
I would imagine so, and coming in with household waste and all the rest.
I was just thinking if we dumped that paper in there, it's, condition of our transfer truck is, it seems like there's a lot of stuff blow out. Is it gonna be an issue with that?
I don't believe so. I mean, it's covered and it's compacted, so. And definitely not with the hook truck. Everything's got a lid on each of our cans that go up the hill. I don't believe it would be any worse than what current practice is.
You guys think? You think, Don?
Well, if it goes in the trash in a normal manner, it should be fine. I
Would-
think.
What'd you guys do?
Are you thinking, well, they recycle paper right in the recycling container, goes all the way to Pacific. So it doesn't get moved in and out.
Mhm.
But
You don't know if they
For
made
trash?
any, did it cost them to take it, or did
No,
they?
I've been gone a while, so I don't know. But I think paper, they had to pay. I know cardboard and oil, when you were mentioning oil, like 3 years ago, it's just changed so much, so you can't even compare
Hmm.
some things with the past. And I've been gone 8 months, okay?
Eat a lot of paper at the landfill?
Yeah, and with the trash, yep.
Does the paper get separated in like Lewis and Clark and Helena? No. So, I mean, so it's just a feel-good incentive, right? Is that,
Well, and
is that what it is?
that is exactly it. The people want it, the commissioners do
Right.
what the people want. And
So
they
it's
want
not
to pay for recycling.
It's not cost
Yeah.
effective, but
No,
it's,
it isn't
but it's a,
cost-
but it is kind of a,
It's
yeah.
It was like,
really-
it was like recycling plastic, it was costing them $100 a ton or something
Oh, yeah, I
to,
think it
just to
even went up
recycle it.
More than that, John, I think it's like 130 a ton.
Huh. Just to recycle plastic, that's
Yeah.
no good.
My opinion is if it doesn't pencil, don't do it.
You have to be fiscally responsible, which is what you're talking about.
I would, I suppose we could make a motion, entertain a motion to do away with the paper recycling, just dump it in the canisters. Is that what you?
The only thing I would have to check to see if we're on contract with J5 and what the duration, if that was a timed duration of contract. I haven't checked in with the vendor to see if we signed a 2 or 3 year contract, but
Okay. Can you take a look at that
I
and
will.
let us know next meeting?
Okay.
And as a recycler who doesn't recycle much anymore, I would ask that you let the public know.
I know they were always upset about the plastic, but not much you can do about that.
No, but at least they know and they're not going to all the trouble of separating it
Yeah,
and finding
yeah,
out it's
yeah.
going in the garbage. That just feels,
That's true. I
Like
separate
betrayal.
all my cardboard, no matter what, and sometimes I feel bad that it's there, and you know and I know that it's just being thrown into one lot, and it's a big waste of my time at my house to do all that sorting when I
Yeah.
could have just thrown it all away.
as long as I think if you present it truthfully to people, they understand.
that's why I just wanted to get the information out for the board to be able to consider, and then I'll find out if we do have a timed contract with the current vendor, and then allow you guys to think on a path forward.
Wait for some community recycling-minded people to show up and speak up. That's really the only thing that would justify it, right?
Use it for fire starter. Okay. think we've talked about the additional transfer and hook truck.
I believe I've talked at length on that phone already.
So we want to do another meeting next month? Probably should. With all the
Last
things that
Thursday
are
in
going on.
February,
Yeah, fourth Thursday of February,
which would be the 28th or
25th,
maybe.
25th.
and I won't be here for that one.
You won't?
Nope.
You gonna be back in Minnesota?
No, I'm going to Arizona.
Someplace warmer?
They just got snow, didn't they?
Would you be around if we were to do it like the first Thursday of March, or? I don't know if is there anything that pressing that we have to meet next month, or?
Let's get some information back from Josh.
Yeah, I won't be back until 10 o'clock Thursday, March 4th, so that won't work.
You can always look in, watch on the YouTube.
The 25th of February at 7 works for me.
Okay. That's what we'll make it then. Okay, any other comments, concerns?
No other public comment besides what Daryl offered before.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks, Craig.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the great job you guys.
Thanks, Josh, for giving